everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Sarah, and today we are going to be building in the world of Myshuno, which is the world that we got with the City Living expansion pack. And I have a bit of a weird build for you guys today, as you guys have already seen from the thumbnail. But we are building a knot-shaped building today, and basically the reason why I wanted to build this was because the last thing that I built in Myshuno was the Rubik's Cube nightclub, which is just really different as far as the architecture goes. And so I felt like it would be really weird just to plop a regular building in Myshuno after I built the Rubik's Cube. So I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I've had this picture saved on Pinterest for a while of this shape. And I think the actual pin is a product listing maybe of something that you could buy that's in this shape. Not sure about that. It should be on my Pinterest if you guys are interested. But anyway, it's not an actual house, but I felt pretty confident that we could build it in The Sims 4. So that's what we're trying to do today. And as you can see, the exterior is already done. The front of it looks really nice. The back of it, awful. It looks terrible because it kind of flattens out a little bit and there's not as much shape to it. And so when you guys see me go to the back, it's not very nice. But I do try to cover it up. But I was thinking about what I could turn this build into, and I actually bulldozed an art center in Myshuno when I built the Rubik's Cube nightclub. And so I figured I could just go on and make this into an art center because it won't make a very good residential house. It's kind of like a maze on the interior. So when you go into the first floor, you're going to have two ladders on each side. And they either lead, I think, to the third floor or the fourth floor. And then you have to go through the third floor to get to the second floor. So it's kind of a maze once you get into the interior, and so it would make an awful residential house. And I actually had thought about polling you guys on here after I got it built and seeing if you wanted it to be an art center or if you wanted it to be a house for your worst sim enemy, because I feel like this would be a horrible nightmare house for a residential lot. And there is a bathroom, but there's no kitchen and there's no bedroom. So I feel like if you did want to move a sim that you absolutely hate in here, it would work out pretty well. But anyway, I didn't want to fool around with trying to fill in all 4 floors for a residential house. So I just went with the art center. But also, can I ask you guys, is it just me or did we used to have an art gallery lot? I feel like we did, but maybe I'm just thinking about the museum. But when I went to build this, I could not find it. All I could find was the art center, and it wasn't what I remembered because you don't actually have to have any art in this build. It's more about having easels and activity tables and woodworking tables and kind of hobby stuff like that, skill building stuff. And so I don't know what I was thinking of. I don't know if I was thinking about a museum or what, but I felt like we at some point had an art gallery kind of venue type, but I don't know. I guess I'm wrong, but let me know if I'm the only one who feels like that. But I couldn't find anything like that other than the museum, so I decided to go with the art center. I'm thinking that that's something that came with City Living as well, but I'm not sure about that, so don't quote me on that, but I feel like that must have come with the City Living expansion pack. But getting on to talk about the build for a minute, we are working on the exterior right now. And I ended up just covering up all the grass that was on the lot because I felt like the grass was too much with the building. And so I ended up using just like a concrete slab, and then I used those little grass planter things that come with the base game, live edit, or debug menu. And I used those to put a little bit of greenery in there, but it still looks very much like a city lot or like a community area. And so I ended up putting a ton of these park benches, which actually, weirdly enough, ended up being the only thing that gave me trouble with functionality in this build. Half of those park benches would not work, and I'm still not really sure why, but I did get them to work in the end. I kind of had to pull them out a little bit further than I had them from the little grass things, but yeah, weirdly enough, that was the only thing that caused functionality issues, and that was one of the things that I felt really confident in. But the exterior of the build really is just meant to look as much like a city area as possible, and right now I'm actually building from the back of the lot because the lighting on this particular lot is atrocious from the front. It's sat on the river, and the river behind it is absolutely beautiful. There's this beautiful bridge in the background as well, but the sun never hits the front of the building well. I think the only time it hits it is in the evening, and then it's just so dark that you can't see anything. And then with this build as well, it was already really, really dark with the colors because everything around this neighborhood has this kind of brick color theme, maybe a little bit of an industrial look about it. And so I decided to go with that with this build so that it would fit in with the rest of the neighborhood. But it's really, really dark, and so I had to build most of it from the back, and then as you guys can see, I've just turned it around because I felt like I was pretty much finished with the front of the build. So I went on and moved on to the back of the build, which, like I mentioned, it's just really ugly when you get to the back of the build. But what I ended up doing was kind of building this little outdoor area underneath the build. So what I ended up doing, instead of just putting a ton of trees under that area to kind of cover up the fact that the shape isn't as nice from this angle, I built this little outdoor area where I'm going to put a bar and then some of the murals. Like, a lot of the requirements get put in this area. So this is kind of the actual community area. But there is a bar, there's a couple of dining tables, but like I mentioned, there's no kitchen in this build, so there's no way for your Sims to prepare food or anything like that. But the dining tables took up a little bit of space, so I did throw them in there. And then we have some of the murals, and I think I put the woodworking table back here as well. And I did end up doing that little tile pattern that I did in my last build as well back here, just to give it a little bit of grass without it being too much. And honestly, I don't really like it that much in this build. I liked it a lot more in Johnny Zest's house. But yeah, I went with it. I left it because after you place all those tiles, it's just kind of, you don't want to go back and redo it. So I decided to leave it. But it does add a little bit of character to the area, I guess, but it's not my favorite part of the build. It kind of turned out a little bit different than I thought it was going to. And I only really know how to do this one tile pattern, so it's the same exact one that I used in my last build. But that little area is just a little community area, and then I did place these little base game trees around as much as I could to kind of cover up the back of the build a little bit. And it helps a little bit, I feel like. I mean, not that you're not going to actually look at this build from the back very much, so I feel like it's okay. But yeah, that's pretty much the main part of this build on the exterior. All the rest of it is pretty much more decorations just to give it the community lot kind of look. I think I did include a little piano area and a microphone as well on the street, just to give your Sims something else to do. And then I do have a few chess tables sprinkled throughout the build, which was not a requirement, but I felt like it made sense in this public space. Also, on the exterior of the build, I did end up using the roof freezes for this build, and the one I used is from the Vampires pack just because it's so dark and I felt like it matched the rest of the build. But I've talked about the roof freezes before, and I knew that I was going to regret using them. I 100% knew it. But I felt like the build needed that really harsh outline on the top of it and around it. But the thing about this build is that in those certain areas where the build is going upwards, I don't know how else to describe that, so hopefully you guys know what I mean. But in the areas where basically I have several floors stacked on top of each other, where the ladders usually are going to be in the inside, I didn't want the freezes to be there because it kind of chopped off the shape. And so I had managed to do that, and the whole build, I was so happy with it, and it worked out perfectly, and the freezes were where they were supposed to be, and they weren't disappearing. And when I went to playtest this build, I usually don't save until after I playtest because usually I do have to fix things, and so I usually wait to save to the gallery and everything like that. So when I go to playtest, I realized that the front part of this build has lost its roof freeze, which was so frustrating. And I tried and tried and tried to put it back on there without affecting the rest of the build. And basically it ended up being that anytime I would try to remove it from one of the back areas that it wasn't supposed to be on, it would also remove it from that front area. So I did end up having to leave the roof freeze in one of the ladder areas that I did not want to do that. But thankfully, it's one of the areas that you really can't see. You don't really notice it, and that was the only way that I could keep it where it was actually supposed to be. So that's what I had to do, which was very disappointing, and every single time I use roof freezes, I feel like I regret it almost immediately. And this build, I had a little bit longer than normal, but I did regret it in the end. But anyway, on to the interior. So the first floor basically just has artwork, except for a bathroom. It does have a couple of bathrooms, which is just 2 toilets and a sink. And so there's no showers or anything here as well. I didn't even think about that when I was thinking of your sim enemies. But other than the bathroom, it's just artwork on the first floor. And I'm trying to remember now because I think we're actually on the 3rd floor because I kind of tried to keep with the ladder flow because like I mentioned, it's kind of a maze on the interior. So I think I went up to the 3rd floor next. So the 3rd floor is actually going to have the easel, which is a requirement for this lot type. And it's also got this little kids activity area because the activity table was a requirement as well for this lot type. So this floor kind of has a little bit more of the artwork that your Sims can actually participate. And Sims were coming up here when I was playtesting and they were doing their own easel artwork. So that area was pretty popular and a lot of Sims actually came here. I was kind of surprised, but the lot filled up pretty fast and it was pretty busy. But other than those 2 areas, it's just more artwork. I used a lot of the city living artwork, but I do have other things like I think I pulled from Cats and Dogs as well. And the San Sequoia travel posters, travel picture things, I pulled some of those as well for this. I just basically wanted to fill up the walls as much as possible. And then for the kind of statue artwork and stuff, I used this little base game rope thing. And I used that to just kind of make it look like it's sectioned off. Like maybe you're at a museum and they don't want you to touch the displays or anything like that. Hopefully you guys know what I was going for. I don't really like the color of the rope because it doesn't match. It's so bright compared to the rest of the building. But then on the 2nd floor, I have kind of a music area, which really wasn't necessary, but this building looks kind of small for everything that it holds in there. And at this point, I was actually getting really tired of trying to come up with new things to place on each floor because I felt like the floors were going to be really small. I felt like it was going to be so easy. And then when I actually get into it, there was quite a lot of wall space to cover up. So this area is pretty much like the music area of the art center. So I have that piano over there. I tried to pull as many of the kind of music-based paintings as I could. And then I also grabbed some platforms and I put some guitars and I think one of the violins. I placed those down behind a display as well, kind of making it look like maybe they belong to some other musician and now they're on display or something like that. So your Sims can't actually get to them and they can't use them. I'm not sure though, you could actually manually drag them out from behind the divider, but I didn't think about that, so I didn't try it out. But then on the 4th floor, I was so ready to be done with this build at this point. So the 4th floor, I decided to do more artwork, of course. But I used this painting from the base game, and I'm not sure what it's called. But it has all these kind of different portraits. But I decided to put it up and kind of pretend like these are the artists that have their work here at this art center. And I put this little plaque from Get Together to make it look like you could read about the artist. I also used that plaque all throughout the build as well for that same purpose, to kind of look like a display plaque or something that would give you some information about what you were looking at. I threw in a bookcase as well up here because I just could not do another art wall. And plus, for some reason, this area ended up bigger than the rest of the floors, and I'm not sure how I did that. It was not intentional. That was 100% a mistake. But for some reason, it ended up bigger, and so I had more space to fill up. So this is what I decided to do with it. But that is pretty much it for this build. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it's a little bit of a quirky one, but let me know what you think down below in the comments. I always love hearing from you guys. And thank you, as always, for hanging out with me today during the speed build. I hope you all are doing really, really well. And hopefully I will talk to you guys soon with another speed build.